Welcome to App Stories, a weekly exploration of the world of apps. Today's show is brought to you by SQL Pro Studios and CardioBot. I'm John Voorhees, and with me is my co-host, Federico Vitici. Hi, Federico.
Hey, John. How's it going?
It's going really well. We've got another special guest today who I know you want to introduce really quickly, but I thought we would do a little background and talk a little bit about what we're going to discuss today, which is recent developments in the iTunes affiliate program, because Apple announced some fairly drastic changes to the program, but we don't want to talk so much about the program itself as much as how it affects discoverability of apps in the App Store. And right from the top, you and I probably ought to just let people know that obviously we have something of a financial stake in the affiliate program because we both earn some of our living off of affiliate links that we link at Mac Stories and Club Mac Stories and elsewhere. And I've created an app called Blink that generates iTunes affiliate links. So we do make money off the iTunes affiliate program. But by the same token, it's one of the smaller, I think, sources of income for both of us. It's just something that I think people ought to understand because this does affect us as it affects a bunch of other people.
Right. And, there's websites that totally depend on the iTunes affiliate program and others like us that they use the affiliate program to sort of earn some additional extra smaller revenue, but it's still an important piece of the pie. So the iTunes affiliate program has been around for years now. As long as I can remember doing Mac Stories, there's been an affiliate program for linking iTunes apps. And what it consists of is you generate a link to an item on the iTunes store. It can be a song, it can be a movie, it can be an app. It can also be a podcast, I think. And if people click the link and they go ahead and buy the item or any other item after following that link, you earn a small commission that until today used to be 7%. That small commission has helped bloggers, podcasters, other types of influencers, and even app makers who use links on their websites to earn some revenue, some additional revenue, just by linking people to Apple's iTunes Store and App Store. And this commission, the thing to understand, doesn't come out from the customer. It doesn't affect the developer. It comes out straight of Apple's pocket. So Apple pays the commission. There's no change for users. You don't pay more for a movie. You don't pay more for an app. And it doesn't affect indie developers or big developers either. Its commission comes out from Apple. And this has been great because it's allowed a diverse audience to make money through the iTunes Store. Not a lot of money, but still some welcome extra revenue. And this has enabled specifically a lot of people, including us at Mac Stories, to write about the App Store and do some independent curation, let's say, talk about iOS apps, quality iPad software, quality iOS games, the kind of stuff that Apple wouldn't usually recommend on the App Store, especially these days because they're so focused on the freemium stuff, the high-profile celebrity emoji, quote-unquote emoji, stickers. And it helped so many people launch websites, launch services to highlight quality stuff on the iTunes Store that is addressed at a very specific niche, but doesn't necessarily deserve or need the mainstream appeal that Apple is focused on.
Right. And I think that that's one way that a lot of people get started. The iTunes affiliate program is a good way to just start generating a little bit of revenue and help grow a site. I mean, it at one time was a bigger piece of Mac Stories, but it has shrunken over the years as different revenue streams have come online. But there are still plenty, as you said, of websites that are relying almost entirely, if not 100%, on the affiliate linking program.
Right. And as I said, the programming used to be a different kind of program when I launched Mac Stories in 2009. And over the years, Apple made some changes. And more specifically, 4 years ago, they sort of revamped the program completely. They made it prettier, easier to use. They raised the commission to 7%. It used to be 5%. And they just made it possible for more types of users to use the program because it was even easier to use. And it's been an important part of Mac Stories. It's grown smaller over the years because we launched Club Mac Stories. I've done more podcasting, but I know a lot of people who have indie blogs, who have websites that cover iOS gaming, for example, including the special guest that is with us today, that they totally depend on the iTunes affiliate program. And this has been important because even if Apple does their own curation, there's value, I believe. And I'm not just saying this because of Mac Stories or App Stories, but I believe there is value in third parties doing curation on the App Store. I mean, when you have almost 2 million apps and there's so much stuff on the App Store, from the freemium games to the unknown productivity gem that is just waiting to be discovered, I believe there is value in having more people look at the App Store, look at the iTunes Store, and see what's worth covering. And I know for a fact that a lot of Apple people also follow these indie publications because, again, there's value in having, I call them external curators. I don't see myself as one of those. I just believe I'm some guy trying apps. But I believe especially the folks at Touch Arcade and other gaming blogs, they do an excellent job at talking about iOS games that you don't usually see on the front page of the App Store, or you don't see right away. And it's because of the iTunes affiliate program that all of these websites were able to avoid doing ads and tracking users, tracking readers on the web, and having to resort to these other perhaps shady ways to make money on the internet these days. And that's why a guy that I know very well was able to launch an app that generates affiliate links, which is one of the most used apps on my iPhone and iPad that I open every day. So there's value in the iTunes affiliate program, and it may be a niche thing, but it is the kind of service that helped a very small niche find a very big audience.
And I think it's the kind of program that, your average user doesn't need to understand what the affiliate program is, but should understand that it still affects them because it's a foundation that underlies, as you said, a lot of these websites. The problem with the App Store is that despite the fact that they've got a really good editorial team that I think has improved over the last couple of years, is that it's limited real estate. There's only so much that they can cram onto that front page, and people are only going to click so deep. So it's valuable to have third parties like Mac Stories, Touch Arcade, and just dozens and dozens of other websites cover the kind of apps that aren't going to ever make it to the front page. Because the front page, because it is limited, is the kind of place where you're going to find things for your average user. And that makes sense. But if you don't have the resource of third-party blogs and other websites to cover the other 20% of apps, they're just going to get lost in the shuffle. And that's not good for anybody, I don't think, including Apple. Thanks to SQL Pro Studio for sponsoring App Stories this week. SQL Pro Studio is a simple and powerful database manager for macOS. It takes complex databases and makes them easy to navigate and edit with a simple, intuitive interface. But you can customize how SQL Pro looks to suit your own needs too, with multiple customizable themes. SQL Pro Studio works with all the most popular database platforms, including Postgres, Microsoft SQL Server, MySQL, and Oracle. The most commonly used features are all right here and easy to reach for your everyday needs. Things like table creation, auto-completion with IntelliSense, syntax highlighting, built-in SQL formatting to make your queries more readable, the ability to run multiple queries, display multiple results sets at once, and edit results in line. There is also support for multiple cloud services like Amazon RDS, Microsoft Azure, and Heroku. SQL Pro is a 100% native macOS application. Unlike other database applications, no Java frameworks are used. That's no small deal. When you use a Mac app, you expect it to act like a Mac app. SQL Pro Studio has a special deal just for App Stories listeners. You can download a 7-day free trial at sqlprostudio.com. If you decide to buy, you can save 20% off using the promo code AppStories. That's AppStories. There are also educational discounts available using the promo code EDU50. SQL Pro Studio is an independently operated and developed app. Website purchases are fully supported with a refund anytime for any reason policy. Thanks again to SQL Pro Studio for supporting App Stories. So I think we need to give a little bit of background about exactly what's happened before we introduce our guest. 2 weeks ago, Apple sent out an email to participants in the affiliate linking program. They do an email about once a month, and in this May issue, they announced changes to their web pages that describe the program and what you can do with it. But they had a sentence at the bottom that said all apps and in-app purchase commissions were being reduced from 7% to 2.5%, which is roughly a 65% drop the following Monday. So on 7 days' notice, Apple announced a roughly 65% reduction in affiliate link revenue, commissions that people could earn through the program. Those were the two things I think that caught people off guard and surprised them, both the magnitude of the drop as well as the short notice, because as Federico explained, there are a number of sites where their entire business model is affiliate linking, and 7 days notice isn't a lot of time to switch your business plan. So that was a little of a surprise. Since then, though, we've passed May 1st, and as far as I can tell, looking at my own account, the commissions haven't dropped. I'm still getting 7%. There's been no word for Apple. There was a Mac Gaming that reported that they got an email from the PHG support team, and PHG is a company that runs the affiliate program for Apple, that PHG had emailed this website and it explained that the commissions were only going down on the in-app purchases. But again, that's an email from a support team from a company that's not Apple, and it's not clear that that's in fact the case. So we don't know entirely what's going on now, but we thought it was still a good opportunity to talk about what this means for discoverability of apps and where things are going from that standpoint. So I'll let Federico introduce our guest today.
So with us today to talk about the affiliate program and what it means for discovering apps, what it means for curation, and in general, the kind of impact that it had on the creation of websites that cover the App Store is Kevin MacLeod. He's been running AfterPad, an excellent indie publication about iOS gaming, tvOS, and more since 2011. AfterPad is one of my favorite websites I visit almost daily to read about iOS gaming and, Apple TV and all of the other stuff that you just cannot find that easily on the App Store. And we thought we could invite Kevin on the show to talk about the affiliate program, but also about curation and about finding apps and games and how the landscape of App Store-focused websites is going to look like after and if Apple implements the changes to the iTunes affiliate program. Welcome to the show, Kevin.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
So how did you get started with AfterPad? What was your original goal with the website?
Well, Apple introduced the MFI controller spec in, I believe, WWDC in 2013, and they launched the controllers late that year, and I bought both of them, the $100 Logitech PowerShell and Moga Ace Power controllers, $100 each for these things, and they weren't very good, and it was impossible to find games for them. They didn't really have any bundled apps, of course, nothing like that. The websites were anemic. Apple certainly didn't tell you anywhere in the store what games you could use with them, and there was no good way to actually find that. So my goal was to basically create a website that I wanted to have, which is a list of every game and what controller it worked with and all that stuff, and just basically make something for myself that I thought there would be a market for that other people might want. And that was the main secondary goal for that, just to learn what the heck I'm doing in this, because it was something I've always wanted to do. And some faraway eventual goal was to hopefully become a part of the Apple community I read all the time and the people I follow. And if everything works right, I felt I had something to contribute to that community, because there's people that know a lot about Apple and there's people that know a lot about gaming, but there isn't a huge intersection among the blogs and podcasts and whatnot that I follow of people that understand both really well. And I felt I could contribute something there in my writing and such. There were 3 existing sites that did this before me that I knew about when I started. There was a website from each of the controller makers, Moga and Logitech, that listed a handful of games, and there was a thread on the Touch Arcade forums, where I've long been a member, that was very complete but not regularly updated and did not list which games worked with which controllers. And I also felt that a forum thread was the wrong format for the type of thing I wanted to do. And after launching, I discovered that there were a couple of other sites out there that did it. I did not know in advance, one MFI for Gamers, one MFIGames.com, but I take a different enough approach from them that I thought there was room for everybody. And I was right.
So, Kevin, it's John. How does the affiliate program play into your website? I mean, what component is that? Was that what really enables you to keep the site going?
Yes. My goal for launching in terms of monetizing the site and actually making a living on it and making it self-sufficient was just to make enough to pay for my hobby of getting these controllers and to pay for all of the games with controller support. If I figured if I could do that, I'd be happy. My expenses for actually running the site were non-existent, basically. I paid whatever it is on Hover, $10 a year for the domain name, and I was hosted on Tumblr in the beginning, so I didn't pay anything for web hosting. Now I pay a big old $5 a month on Linode, so it's still pretty low. And if I could just make enough from the affiliate program to pay for testing the games and testing the controllers, I would have been happy. I'm doing way better than that now. It ended up becoming far more popular than I even hoped it would be, which is great. And that is only monetized through the affiliate program because I actually really don't like advertisements. Personally, I block ads, so I'd feel like I'd be a hypocrite if I ran my own ads and blocked them on other people's sites, so that's not fair. And I don't think Patreon existed at the time that I launched, but even if it did, I'm a nobody and nobody's going to pay me anything. Now I might be able to get away with a Patreon, but I certainly couldn't when I launched. So the affiliate program was really the key to everything.
So how did you come up with the idea of, I'm going after this kind of niche that Apple isn't really addressing on the App Store? Did you ever fear that Apple would eventually launch their own, gallery of MFI controller-enabled games on the App Store? And did you, or do you actually want Apple to do that and sort of Sherlock your website?
I would love to be Sherlocked, but I've heard some things from what goes on inside of Apple, and they don't actually know what games have controller support. There's no way, if you're a developer, to tell Apple, hey, this has controller support, the way you check like a box for iCloud and a box for Game Center. There is no controller support box, and I've heard from inside Apple that they actually use my site when they need to find out what games have controller support. So I would love to be Sherlocked, but I don't see it happening. That would also involve Apple caring about iPhone gaming and caring about controllers, which I think we're a ways away from that happening. But anyway, the first part of that question was,
how did you come up with the idea of launching this gallery of MFI games?
The idea was I figured that anybody who would spend at least $100 on this piece of garbage controller would probably have money to spend on premium gaming, and that would help me out a lot because that's what I get affiliate links from. So I figured it was a niche market, a self-selecting niche market that would be profitable.
That's very clever, actually.
I'm pretty proud of that one. And it worked. I've been more profitable on the affiliate program than you'd expect. I punch above my weight on that because I'm a much smaller site than sites like Touch Arcade and everything, of course. But the niche I happen to focus on both appeals to me because it's something I like, and I don't like freemium games personally. I don't cover them very often. I like premium games, and I think premium games often tend to fit within controller support and stuff like that. And at the very least, I could pester developers to add controller support to some of them if I get big, which I've done a few times. It attracted a niche of people that I like and people that kind of think the same way I do and probably also wouldn't like ads and would probably be willing to download games via affiliate links.
Yeah, and it sort of reinforces the idea that the affiliate program was perfect for publications like AfterPad or even Mac Stories, that they go after a very specific type of reader with a very specific kind of taste with the disposable income to spend on apps and games, which is great for developers, which is great for Apple, and it's also great for us.
Exactly. And there's only really one downside of the affiliate program that I can think about as a journalist, which is the potential conflict of interest you would have, where there's the idea that you wouldn't give a negative review to an app or game because then somebody wouldn't be likely to buy it and you wouldn't get your affiliate commission from that. And because we're in the iOS space where everything's, even the expensive games are cheap, that isn't really an issue because I already have a bias against covering free games, so it's not like I'd be less encouraged to cover free games because I wouldn't get a commission on those. I already don't like free games. I'm not going to cover those. And in iOS, there's so many games that not talking about a game is just as bad as a negative review.
Exactly.
Developers really want you to talk about their game at all, so
Exactly.
I'm not really going to cover something I don't like just because I already have a limited amount of time. And the only other place it could is covering the controllers themselves, because I do long, in-depth reviews of every controller out there. But if you read them, I'm pretty harsh on the ones that I have issues with, and I think my readers can trust me regarding conflicts of interest. And that's the only downside of the affiliate program.
Yeah, I was just reading your most recent GameVice controller review today, and
One of the better ones so far.
yeah, it sounds like it. It sounds like they've really addressed a lot of the recent limitations.
Come a long, long way from the PowerShell, yes.
So, Kevin, how do you think Apple could do a better job at curation? What are they doing wrong? I mean, what could they improve on?
Where to begin? They could actually care about gaming. That would be important for them to do a better job of curating it. They have to, first of all, they have every right to do whatever they want to, both in terms of paying for the affiliate program and the decision they've chosen to go with their store is to create a free-for-all environment where everybody is basically on their own. Apple promotes whatever the biggest sounding thing is at the moment without caring really about the quality of the game. And aside from that, you can buy search ads, but you're on your own. And that leads to a race to the bottom, obviously, as other people have covered more than me. Apple has done really nothing to dissuade this. So the whole question of what could they be doing better here implies that they think there's a problem before they would start doing anything better. And nothing they've done really suggests there's a problem in their minds with how things are going. I would disagree. I think that's a horrible problem. And the App Store is incredibly un-Apple-like when you're browsing it. It doesn't feel anything like going to an actual Apple store, and it doesn't feel anything like their product line. Like, they should have something, if they wanted the App Store to feel like Apple, reminiscent of the Nintendo Switch store or something like that, where they don't even have the low quality stuff. It's only the good stuff, but that's not what they want to run. So if what they want to run is a game with a bunch of big freemium titles and a bunch of free stuff, they're working perfectly fine right now.
Thanks to CardioBot for sponsoring App Stories. Your Apple Watch measures your heart rate every 4 minutes during the day. With CardioBot, you can easily understand that data so you can improve your lifestyle and discover notable patterns. CardioBot is an iPhone app that separates heart rate data into low, resting, high resting, and elevated heart rates through an elegant interface that makes it easy to view statistics for individual days, browse detailed timelines, and compare day-by-day changes. Check the show notes for a link to CardioBot in the App Store. Thanks again to CardioBot for sponsoring App Stories.
You actually brought up a great point with the Nintendo Switch. I've been thinking about this, and
Me too.
and I almost wonder if the conditions were different on the App Store, if the incentives maybe were different. Imagine the kind of store with high-quality titles featured on the front page constantly, instead of being relegated to a simple section that says pay once and play, which is basically the section of quality indie titles on the App Store. Imagine if it were more like the eShop or the PlayStation Store, where all the good stuff comes up.
The Switch needs 2 games to be great right now. I would suggest everybody buy the Switch right now, and it only has Zelda, and it only has Mario Kart, and they're good enough. You don't need a million games. You just need 2 really great games to make your system worthwhile. That's my thoughts. I don't know. Apple disagrees. They're always touting how many games they have. But let's talk a little bit more about the Switch as it relates to Apple, because the Switch behind the scenes is actually very similar to iPads and iPhones. It runs on ARM chips made by NVIDIA. It's actually orders of magnitude weaker than the latest iPhone 7. Not even close. The iPhone 7 could blow through any Switch game you wanted to port to it. The problem with actually getting developers to port games from the Switch, which I would love to see Apple do, is their neglect of the iPad line makes it almost impossible to do that, because the iPads, the top of the line iPad mini you get now, or the latest and greatest low-end, low-cost regular iPad that just came out, are actually not as good as the Switch at running at their native resolution. So if you were a developer that wanted to port a premium game from the Switch or from any other console, you could totally do that on iPhone 7, and it would be amazing. You could get the 6S probably, even the 6, but you can't target any of the iPads except the Pros, which gamers don't get, and you can't target the Apple TV because it's way out there in the weeds in terms of performance. So part of, if Apple wanted to encourage premium gaming more, part of what they would need to do is re-examine their priorities even in hardware. Because it seems like since the iPad Air 2, where they really had an amazing iPad relative to the iPhone out there, they've dropped the ball a little bit. And it kind of hurts because I'm a big time iPad fan and it's unfortunate. And the Apple TV is the real issue there because that was completely dropping the ball on their part. Like they could not have done that worse from a gaming perspective. They could not have launched that product worse. And it's really kind of depressing because I was hoping that would be their big push into gaming for a long time. In fact, even from the very beginning of launching the site, I had in the back of my mind that I would pivot to talking about Apple TV stuff when that launched. Because if I established myself and maybe ran AfterPad for a year talking about iPad and iPhone games with controller support, and then I kind of created my name for myself and get people visiting the site, and then launch big with the Apple TV when that comes out, I thought that would be a great opportunity there to be the big site talking about Apple TV games. And they just dropped the ball so badly. There was no point in pivoting to that because there's nobody playing games on the Apple TV.
Requiring the remote control support for the Apple TV, I think, is what really killed it because they didn't really backtrack on that for a solid year.
Well, and launching a second model with completely superfluous internal storage when what they could have done is bundle a game controller with it was also a big one. Like that second model would have made perfect sense if it came with one of those SteelSeries controllers in the box. Then suddenly you've got the gaming model and the non-gaming model, and it actually would have a story behind it. But launching a second model that cost more for no reason, and the hardware's already underpowered. It runs, I think, the A8 chip still, and we're on the A10 now, and they could probably have put an X-class chip in there, something more powerful, because it doesn't have to have a battery. It is powered directly from the wall. There was no reason for them to go low-powered. If they really wanted it to be about gaming, they should have done a lot of things differently.
So considering all of these elements together, the problems of the App Store, the problems with the tvOS App Store and the Apple TV, and the changes coming to the affiliate program, what does that mean for you specifically, for AfterPad, and for the rest of the industry here, blogs and websites?
It's only a problem, in my opinion, and maybe in your opinion, and in the opinion of a lot of readers, but Apple doesn't necessarily view either of these as a problem. Like, they may not think websites like mine need to exist. They might think that they would rather people go directly to the App Store to get games, and if every site like mine closed, they might not view that as an issue. They have different priorities than me. If I were in charge, if it were my priorities we were talking about here, and probably yours, then the affiliate changes, which, to reiterate, may or may not be happening, actually. It turns out now that there's some mixed information about that, whether it's going to go through, but let's assume it happens, and they are cutting affiliate rates from 7% now to 2.5% in the near future, then that will have unintended side effects across our industry that, again, not right or wrong, but Apple should understand what they're getting themselves into with that, which is that sites like mine that rely entirely on affiliate programs cannot continue working like that. Like, there's no way I'm going to make enough money entirely from affiliate links to power the site if they keep cutting things the way they are now. So you have a couple of other options. You either have to go to ads, which I don't like ads personally, but from what I've heard, the amount of money you make from ads in the industry these days is going downhill as well. I can't speak to that from personal experience, but the one ad company that was actually decent, Deck Ads, they went under recently, and I've heard that click-through rates on normal ads are really bad, and you have to resort to more and more sleazy stuff like tracking people across websites and building profiles of them and finding out if they search for shoes on Amazon, you should put big banner ads for shoes on their gaming site, even though there's no overlap there. Just stuff like that I really find distasteful. And the other thing you can do is Patreon. And frankly, that's something I should do. But then there isn't really a downside to that. I just worry that I'm not able to make as much money from that as I could from the affiliates that I'm losing. And I worry that the next guy won't be able to make it work, because Patreons are great if you have a name. And I sort of have a name now, but the next guy won't. I wouldn't have been able to make it work with Patreon when it started. I would have had to just either get very low rates from Apple, or I probably wouldn't have even bothered. And that is unfortunate. And the big sites can make it work because they have a lot of different ways to do monetization. Touch Arcade will be fine. Sites like yours will be fine. But the little guys are going to get squeezed pretty hard on this. And if that's what Apple wants, they're going about it the right way. And I wish it wasn't what they wanted.
Yeah, well, that's part of the problem, is that the little guys become the big guys. And if you can't start out with something like affiliate linking to kind of build that audience, it's very hard to ever move to the next step.
Yeah, especially if they cut the rates pretty hard. It wasn't easy for me to move to the next step, but I had an inbuilt audience of people looking for what I provided, and it just happened to fit well with the affiliate program. But it's hard out there, and I don't see, every little bit helps, and this seems like something Apple doesn't have to be doing right now, and I'm trying to look at it from their perspective, and I don't really see why they're doing it. I can't really figure out from their perspective what they gain from this, because if all of the little guys like us, or me mostly, fold, then left with is the App Store, and it's not very good for discovery. And Apple has to know it's not good for discovery of certain types of things, right? Like, they have to know that. And because they're optimizing it for freemium and they're optimizing it for big name games. So they have to know that there's a gap there for the little guys to fill in with niche gaming and stuff that doesn't appeal to everybody, and even helping discovery for their own reviewers on the App Store to know what they should be talking, or not reviewers, but editors, to know what they should be talking about. Those guys have to find out about what the big names are somewhere. So it feels like a net lose across the line, but I don't know. I'm not sure what they're planning here. I don't see it. I've tried to. I hope that this latest in things, that it might not actually be happening after all, ends up being the case. But I'm not sure about that. I'm not optimistic.
So, Kevin, thank you for joining us on App Stories this week. Where can people find you on the internet?
Well, thanks a lot for having me on the show. It was great to be here. I've been reading you guys for a long time, and it was great to finally participate in a podcast. People can find me at AfterPad.com, and they can find me on Twitter at AfterPad.
Well, that's it for this week, folks. Thanks again to our sponsors, SQL Pro Studio and CardioBot, and a big thanks to Kevin MacLeod of AfterPad for joining us to talk about app discovery. If you've been enjoying the show, please head over to iTunes and leave a rating. You can find both me and Federico writing at appstories.net and for Club Mac Stories. Federico is at Vitici on Twitter. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees, JOHNVOORHEES. Talk to you next week, Federico.
Ciao, John.